Let's focus on the IRM mission, the India Revival mission that we at Times Network have been conducted. And today we have a very special guest. Sandliya, chairman at Eicher Group, is now with us. Thank you so much for taking out time for us. Could you just first start by, the big question that everybody wants to know or everybody wants to answer, that has the time come to lift the lockdown? If yes, and a partial lockdown which is lifted, how can it actually impact the economy?
See, fundamentally, lifting lockdown partially may have to happen. But I think the major challenge is that in India, we have still a lot of red zones. Taking automotive industry into picture, we cannot do anything unless the entire ecosystem is opened up. For example, if the customers have got to dealership, the dealerships have got to open. That's the first point. Whatever stocks they have, them have to sell. Then if you look at the manufacturing side, we need to have the entire supply chain augmented. And we may have many component suppliers from the red zone. How are we going to ensure the logistics of supply of components coming into the manufacturing units so that we can produce? Even if one component is not able to reach the plant cannot produce. So I think we need to ensure that the entire logistics chain is opened up, including transportation, because today we are only able to have the essentials being transported across the country. The non-essentials are yet to start. And it is not only the manufacturing sector, our own components. We need to ensure that all other associated industries also open up. For example, if you don't have the electronic goods sector opening up, whether it's computers or networks, things being made available for the remote working, because even if we have manufacturing, it will be partial. What the government is saying is start with 25-30% of the workforce. I mean, how do you distribute the 25-30% of the workforce? How are we going to distance them in the organizations? How are we going to monitor them? There are lots of issues which we need to tackle. Suppose in a plant we find one case having impacted with COVID-19. How do we do? We can't close the entire plant. How do we segregate? So there are a lot of issues which need to be tackled. We need to have a comprehensive solution. Almost all the companies have worked on the SOPs for restarting the operations. But I think the government also has to look at it comprehensively to ensure that we don't leave any of the loose ends untied, which could create problems.
Right. As you pointed out, that everything needs to open up so that the ecosystem can start once again. But what is the sense you get? Whenever it opens up, it will be a partial opening. Auto ancillary contribute a lot to the GDP, a lot to, employment, the way things happen in the manufacturing space. You think it needs to start so that the impact can be cushioned a little bit?
It has to, but that's what I said. We need to understand what does this partial lifting mean? If the partial lifting also does not take place, for example, even if you open up the dealership, you can't open up the entire country, is understandable. But at least on the major spots where there is sales likely to take place, does it open up? If that doesn't open up, there's no point. Not only that, if you look at it from an overall economy point of view, we need to ensure that there is money in the hands of the people to buy. What will they do if your economy, the growth is not taking place? So I think it's a combination of a variety of factors. I think we cannot look at it in isolation. But my belief is that we have this COVID-19, it's a reality. Remote working will be a reality, but manufacturing cannot be done remotely, which we all understand. So we need to have some kind of a basis on which we're able to kind of reopen and yet do it with caution so that we don't have a major disaster coming up later on. Because if we have, one of the major issues we need to consider, we can't have to start and then stop, again restart, again restop. That's not going to work. That will create tremendous chaos. When we open up, we should be clear that we can work on it for a few months at a stretch rather than stop, start kind of an operation. We need to be very careful on it.
Thank you once again for being with us through this entire week.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Sandliya. This is Mubina as well joining in. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. Now, yes, point is completely taken. Some industries, of course, can be taken, at home. The work can be taken at home, but that's obviously not the case for manufacturing. And more importantly, you want continuous manufacturing. It should not be that, okay, you've started for like 2 weeks and then again there was unfortunately an outbreak of the virus and then you had to again pause. that just ends up getting more costly, and it just defeats the whole purpose of being productive. So what do you think should be the way in which one can start manufacturing? I mean, do you suggest that maybe instead of working 3 shifts, manufacturing firms should work 1 shift? And again, even in that 1 shift, you should have workers that are well protected. I mean, do you think that would be a feasible way to at least start off and ease off this lockdown?
Yes, when we have... Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Okay. Working 1 shift, 2 shift is all mechanic. Okay. But even that 1 shift working can take place only if we can get components in. So the logistics being made available, the entire supply chain working is very critical. So I think what we should do is take a comprehensive analysis, evaluate all the risks and possibilities, look at the scenarios likely to happen in terms of even restarting of the virus and something which happened in terms of crisis. What will we do? How will we manage? So we should do it on a cost basis, do it on slow basis, but yet keep opening up. I think it's very important to do that, but ensure the entire logistics chain is well managed, well oiled machinery. Yeah. But without that, don't open up. It doesn't help if you open up partially and our dealerships are not open, but we open manufacturing. Nothing will happen. We'll produce a stock up, but that is not going to help us. Cash flow is not going to come in unless the dealers open up, the customers are willing to buy. So even when we open up, the customers will have the access to go to the dealership. If they don't have transportation to go to the dealership and buy vehicles or run the vehicles, it's again of no use. So I think we need to have the entire system working. Say commercial vehicles, nobody will buy trucks unless he can actually use it for transportation of goods. Why will you go and buy and invest money in a truck if you can't use it for transportation? How will people buy a bus in case you can't use it for people transportation? With education institutions closed and many offices closed, people working remote working, even the demand pattern is going to change. So I think we need to have a comprehensive evaluation. I think it's not easy to press the button and start. I think we have got into a situation which is extremely critical, extremely complicated. It needs a well thought out solution. Yeah.
Mr. Sandliya, you actually answered my next question as well. That's with respect to demand. A lot of B2C companies, even if they, let's say, start production, let's say, if they are able to procure their components, their raw materials from their various suppliers and dealers, the problem is that your customer may not want to go and buy, especially if it's one of those discretionary items, like let's say maybe a passenger vehicle, sir. So in such a situation, I mean, do you think that when one is already working in maybe a lower shift or is just working, in 1 shift, do you think that would just be the enough amount of production you're putting in the pipeline to absorb that little bit of demand? Or do you think we would be sitting on a situation where the dealers have got all of that vehicle, got all of the products from the factory and the manufacturing facilities, but the dealership has nowhere to sell it?
Well, listen, it's a very complicated thing. It will vary from company to company. We cannot have one solution fit all problems. Okay. You are absolutely correct. The consumers buying is going to be very, very slack. It's very difficult to predict today because when people don't have money to run their normal families, when the unemployment rate is very high and people are having, layoffs and things like that, where will they get the money to buy? So I think there is a certain amount of injection of money in the system is very critical for boosting the demand. So the demand for personal vehicles is going to be, again, when people start working from home, there is very little requirement for them to buy cars to travel to the office or travel anywhere else. So they're not going to do tourism today in terms of going around various places. So therefore, the need for personal vehicles is also going to be very, very different. Yes, at the same time, there will be some demand that is taking place, but we have to wait and watch because today it's so volatile, so dynamic, it's very difficult to predict. But I do believe that the commercial vehicle sector will take quite some time to get back because a commercial vehicle is basically a barometer of the economic growth. If the economic growth does not take place, commercial vehicles growth is going to be very, very difficult. As it is, this sector has gone down by 30-40%. Last year has been a disaster. With COVID impact, it has been a further disaster. So I think it will take quite some time for it to coil back. That can happen only when the overall economy grows, the demand for movement of goods and passengers increase. Only then the commercial vehicle sector can do. Yes, there is one plus point in the whole system. If the government spends on infrastructure, which I think the government is promising Nitin Gadkari in various interviews has said that he's going to pump in a lot of money in the infrastructure. The construction sector opens up. To that extent, there will be movement or creation of demand for trucks, for at least in that particular sector, which will build up some more revenue for the people, getting employment, people getting more money, which will start boosting up the consumer demand. So the whole cycle will have to work. It's going to, the short lockdown has given us great lessons that it's not going to be easy to predict today what's going to happen. But we have to wait and see. And I think it's going to be a real $1 million question. Many companies are still wondering as to how their demand will pan out, which kind of products will sell, high cost, low cost, commuter segment. It's all extremely difficult to predict in the current circumstance. But I think all the companies are working on it and trying to make their own guesses. And while also they have to plan also which of the offices or which of the services can work from home. That's also important because all the back office function can still continue to work from home. So I think the whole integration and things will have to take time. We'll see. I think we need to wait and see. I can't make there's no single bullet or one simple answer to this question. Sorry, it's not easy to give a straightforward answer for this question. But things will pan out. And I think I'm optimistic. I'm not pessimistic. My belief is it will take time, but things will happen in the right direction. That's, I think we should live with positive thinking rather than thinking only negative. Okay, it's positive, but yet it will take time.
Right, it's positive, but it may take time. There are certain measures that have been announced by the government for people. RBI has taken a lot of steps. You think a lot of other heavy lifting will have to be done as things open up, as we come to know what are the problems that various industries are facing?
Much more opening up has to be done. I think whatever has been done is good, positive, and I'm very, very thankful to the government and welcome for the steps taken, particularly RBI having released a lot of things. But with the overall cash flow situation being tough, I think the government has got to really be dynamic and do a lot more. I think government has got to open up the coffers and open the purse. And for example, in the auto industry, they have to start looking at the scrappage policy to at least ensure that the old vehicles get seasoned out, the incentivization of the new vehicles being bought. Some of these things have to be brought in. The government has to give financial benefits for these things, otherwise it won't work.
All right, great. Mr. Sandliya, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking out time to join us today on ET Now as a part of our India Revival mission. Many thanks for joining us.